We all love Ubisoft, don't we? What? No? Oh. Well, we can at least all agree that they've been an extremely influential company over the years. Whatever we may feel about their management practices, or even some of their games, there's no denying the impact they've had on the industry. Today we're taking a look at just some of the ways Ubisoft has shaped gaming as we know it today. Of course, this list is by no means definitive and is just a bit of fun. We aren't saying that any games mentioned here definitely copied from Ubisoft specifically, nor are we saying that Ubisoft necessarily created any of these concepts first. Rather, these are ideas that Ubisoft certainly popularised that then worked their way into the larger medium, with the company's influence seen in places you might not have noticed it before. You could even say that they're ubiquitous. Anyway, we've got a lot to talk about, so let's crack on. I'm Peter from TripleJump, and here are 10 ideas everyone copied from Ubisoft video games. Number 10. Eavesdropping and tailing missions. Eavesdropping in the first Assassin's Creed game wasn't that bad. It was a case of sitting anonymously on a bench while some Templars openly discussed incredibly important plans that could have quite easily waited until they were in private, to be honest. Contrivance aside though, eavesdropping didn't take that long to do, and it added to the experience of plotting your assassinations. Then, in later games, it evolved into tailing missions which involved following people without being seen. This often meant scaling rooftops and avoiding guards, and inevitably falling off that rooftop because the game glitched slightly, and then not being able to get back up in time. I'm calm, I'm fine with it. My point is, eavesdropping became the worst thing that ever existed. It has since become a trend in the wider gaming world. Days Gone, for example, could have drawn influence from any mechanic in gaming history, but decided to go with this one. It's a bit like seeing a field of pristine flowers with a decaying pigeon in the middle and thinking, yeah, flowers are pretty and everything, but I am a bit peckish. Number 9. Watchtowers. What better way to scout a location by climbing something high and having a look around? Well, maybe using a map, that's probably a better way. Actually, I've already got a map. When I press this button, it's just not filled in for some reason. I mean, if I were to buy an A to Z of Ye Olde Blighty, only for it to have the entirety of Stoke-on-Trent displayed as a blank void, I'd be a little bit peeved. Be understandable though, never go anywhere near Stoke-on-Trent, everyone. It seems there's been a spree of map makers flogging subpar atlases to naive travellers throughout world history. I can't even remember the last time I loaded into an open world and actually saw a useful map with things written on it. Admittedly, games would be a lot shorter and more akin to a GPS-assisted orienteering experience if everything was labelled from the get-go, but I'd at least be interested to see it. Ubisoft weren't the first to have maps that fill in over time, of course, but they have pushed the idea that climbing towers is the best way to do that. Some games have tried to evolve the concept though. In Middle-earth Shadow of War, for instance, you have to actively search out points of interest from above. In most cases though, you're still scaling tall buildings and simply looking around. What I really like is the image of your protagonist scribbling down all the places they can see from that vantage point onto their map using a pencil. That's a surefire way to tumble off the highest point in the game and very much miss the hay bale. Ooh, nasty. Number 8. Enemy tagging. Far Cry 3 is the go-to game when the topic of enemy tagging comes up. It's the game that popularised the concept in the industry, and I for one think it's a good thing. There's been a push for realism in modern gaming, and because of this, new issues have arisen. Enemies have become harder to differentiate against the environment, especially in the gritty stealth shooters that are permanently cloaked in shadow. Put me in any Sniper Elite game, and I'll likely assassinate a fruit bowl before I hit any intended target. For the likes of me, enemy tagging is a godsend. It's been around in some form or other long before Far Cry 3, several of the Elder Scrolls games for example, though it's Ubisoft's outing that's almost solely responsible for it being everywhere nowadays. It will never please those who prefer their shooters to be as realistic as possible, and that's okay, but for the rest of us, well, I'm just glad I won't have any more fruit bowl salesmen having a go at me. Number 7. Enemy encampments. Once again, enemy encampments were not invented by Ubisoft, far from it. Just Cause came out long before Far Cry 3, and its settlement liberations were a fun side objective. However, it's again pretty much Ubisoft's fault that every open world game today has a wealth of enemy bases that require clearing out. Ugh. While these are still enjoyable from time to time, especially when you manage to clear them out stealthily without any alarms being raised, you have to admit it gets a bit tiring pretty quickly. When you step into a new open world game, it can be nice to scout out your first few camps from a distance, tactically analysing the threat and taking the guards out one at a time. But after those first few, you know you'll just be barging in gun first to get them over with as quickly as possible. And once you're sick of them in one game, well, seeing them in yet another one is not likely to change your mind. Sorry, New York, I've got backpacks to find and landmarks to photograph. You'll have to deal with those thug bases yourselves. Number 6. Countless meaningless collectibles. A world map packed full of inane collectibles may be the most defining aspect of any Ubi world. Well, that or bugs. Abstract collectibles had previously been the backbone of classic colourful platformers that I'm on record as loving. The likes of Crash, Banjo and Spyro were all built on the principle of, ooh, there's a shiny thing, me like shiny thing, me get shiny thing. It was a simple time for my simple brain. So it's difficult for me to criticise Ubisoft too badly for dragging these concepts kicking and screaming into open world adventuring. However, I do blame them for filling their sparse worlds with meaningless map-clogging filler masquerading as content. Just look at it. I don't think I'm alone in saying that a treasure chest should be a rewarding discovery, not a checklist item for achieving 100%. Plus, we all know that these collectibles just get left until the end and become a boring couple of afternoons for the platinum or achievement hunters among us. Just give collectibles meaning again, like Crash's rideable gems, or the treasure Spyro uses to pay the balloonist, or that arsehole moneybags.
It will cost you 100 of your gems to cross.
Oh, Jesus Christ. No, I changed my mind actually. I don't like this. Number 5. In-game social media. In Grand Theft Auto 5, there was an in-game social media site called Life Invader. It was a Facebook and Twitter parody that was a nifty little feature if you searched it out, but outside of a specific mission that involved the company more than the platform itself, it was largely ignorable. Ubisoft, however, have integrated social media as a necessary feature in some of their games. Take Watch Dogs 2, for example. There, you gain abilities by increasing your follower count on an in-game social media channel, allowing you to do more sciencey tech stuff. There's an in-game reason for this, but explaining it would make both you and me stupider. You'll also find examples in South Park: The Fractured But Whole, The Crew 2, and of course, the other Watch Dogs games. Considering that this feature is relatively new and Ubisoft seem to be the main company pushing it, think of this one as more of a prediction of what everyone will copy in the future. However, before you have a go at us for including an entry that hasn't actually been copied by anyone yet, it's definitely creeping in. City Skylines and Spider-Man are two very popular examples, and we can only see this getting more endemic. Before you know it, every middle-aged person in Tamriel will be posting selfies on their own version of Facebook, which you could call Elder Scrolls. You get it, because it's like old people scrolling through a social media feed. Okay. Number 4. Free flow combat. It's often said that the Arkham series pioneered the free-flowing combat system. The way the caped crusader effortlessly hops between multiple goons, socking, thwacking, and kapowing his way to victory is considered a revolutionary landmark in 3D beat-em-ups. But is it really? Arkham Asylum may be the moment the formula was perfected, but it wasn't the first mainstream game to give it a go. While you can trace the roots back through the Assassin's Creed series, the most influential title that likely inspired future games was Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time. Admittedly, it has aged about as well as those pears you bought and then completely forgot about until you noticed the smell, but you can give this game A+ for effort, as it's a pretty good early attempt. No wonder The Sands of Time is held in such high regard. Now let's just leave it to the realms of nostalgia, where it can remain a fond memory. Oh god damn it, Ubisoft! Number 3. The night vision sound effect. You know how everybody thinks a frog goes ribbit? Well, it doesn't. Well, not many of them do, anyway. In fact, most species have their own unique sound. It's one of those popular misconceptions, though, brought on by Hollywood, mainly because there's a specific type of frog local to Tinseltown called a Pacific tree frog, which was recorded for a sound effects library and then used literally everywhere. I bring this up because a similar thing happened with the sound of night vision goggles, and that is entirely Sam Fisher's fault. Yes, sorry to be that guy, but night vision goggles don't make this whining noise.
Going dark.
No! They apparently don't make any noise anymore, though I can't vouch for that personally. I'm not usually one for conducting espionage in my day-to-day life. Older ones may make a sort of squeal, but you'll be hard-pressed to find one that makes the iconic Splinter Cell sound outside of video games and movies. I know that might take some of the fun out of it, but hey, that's what I'm here for. Number 2. Eagle vision. Yes, while we're on the subject of vision, it's time to talk about seeing through walls. Now this may be another case of Arkham Asylum being more influential when it comes to practical use, but again, because this featured in the first Assassin's Creed game and continues to be featured in the series today, we're chalking this one up as another current day mechanic popularised by Ubisoft. The first game's eagle vision was a lot more limiting than the similar mechanic used in Arkham Asylum, which worked to its benefit as it became more about scouting out your target and then planning ahead. Alongside enemy tagging, the addition of a coloured overlay which highlights important objects and enemies helps stop them blending into the backgrounds. It's a good feature in 3D games with large open worlds or rooms packed full of set dressing, so long as it's not overdone. In Batman, we found ourselves using it too much, to the point that we remember those games being about fighting a series of red skeletons, and that's a problem. With something like The Witcher 3, where its primary use is for detective work and following tracks, it's helpful without getting in the way, and the skeletons get to stay inside the bodies where they belong. And number 1, free running. Assassin's Creed was originally going to be a follow-up to The Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, so naturally it nicked a good few ideas from that game. We've already talked about the combat, but it's the free running, or parkour if you want to get Francais about this, that really defines the impact of Assassin's Creed. While free running has always been a bit, shall we say, temperamental in the series, it can't be overstated how impressive it was back in 2007. Sprinting from point A to point B had never felt as fun and fluid before then. Today you'll find a lot of games that have a one-button running and climbing system inspired by the Ubisoft title. And even the slower moments of vertical climbing were revolutionary too. Climbing in games had always looked manufactured, with obvious points to grab hold of, sometimes even highlighted in a brightly coloured paint, like the whole world had been given the once-over by a fanatical, health and safety-conscious employer terrified of getting sued. Assassin's Creed, however, felt seamless, as there were no longer very obvious specific climbing points. If it was a building, you could climb it, and you would find your character reaching out and grabbing the most innocuous looking divots, timbers and studs sticking out of a wall. Even The Legend of Zelda got in on the Ubisoft action. Breath of the Wild's climb anything approach feels very grow home if you ask me. In fact, it's got watchtowers, vast amounts of meaningless collectibles, enemy encampments, and then Spider-Man has free running, eagle vision, fluid combat, in-game social media, and thug bases. You heard it here first, everyone. Nintendo and Sony are just ripping off Ubisoft nowadays. Jesus. And that's our list, but in what other ways do you think Ubisoft has shaped the industry? Are there other major developers and publishers you feel have been just as influential? Let us know in the comments down below. You can follow myself on TripleJump on Twitter here, and if you want to support the things you enjoy, then why not check out our Patreon? Finally, don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. I've been Peter from TripleJump, and thanks for watching.